Hi everybody, welcome back to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yee, and today I'm going to be taking a look at this. This is Acts of the Evangelists by Bell Tower Games, designed by Jeff Warrender. If I'm not mistaken, this is, I believe, the company's first publication. This is a small publishing house. This is a historical game that blatantly has a religious theme to it. I'm going to be reviewing it, both for its gameplay and for its thematic integration. One thing to know, this is what I would consider more of a historical game than what a lot of times we call Euro games. You know, there's more thematic integration and fewer abstractions, so to speak. And because of that, there's an interesting rule set. While I do recommend in general that people watch the rules overviews before I go into my final thoughts and my review of the game and the critiques of it, I would really recommend it for this video specifically, because it'll give you a framework in which to understand why I'm talking about this game the way I am, the good and the bad about it all. So I'm going to, in light of that, show you how it plays, then I'll give you my thoughts. Here's the setup for a game of Acts of the Evangelists. In this game, each player is a gospel writer trying to write their own gospel record according to a particular goal here. So in this case, the red player is focusing on Jesus as the wise teacher. They'd like to collect more red cards. And this player here is focusing on writings of Jesus as the Jewish Messiah. So therefore, you'd like to collect blue cards if possible. However, there's also other scoring objectives that we'll be covering here shortly. Just a few concepts to make sure to understand here. These cards correspond to different cities. So these ones can be accessed if you are in Rome. These ones can be accessed if you're in Thessalonica, Lystra, and so on. This deck of cards here is a duplicate of all of the cards that are around the outside. These cards over here are people that you have interviewed, represented by these discs. As you collect cards and then you interview people as well, you'll be able to basically strengthen and get more points, get more validity to your writings. There's also these literary devices that we'll be covering here shortly that are also going to be endgame points. The basic flow of the game is that the active player has these 3 action tokens that they can use to do these actions. They can do each one of these actions once per turn. They can choose to do it weak, which is by spending one token and doing a basic version, or they can do it strong, and they get a much stronger version. If a player does a weak action, the other players around the table can spend one of these follow tokens and pay it to them, so they can also follow. However, if a player chooses to do a strong action, they get a much better version of the action, but everybody else at the table can do a free follow, or a free simple version of that. So let's talk about the 4 actions. To travel, a player can move up to 2 spaces. If another player follows, whether for free or by paying a disc, they can move 1 space. The next action is the tradition action. You look at the cards of the city that you are in. So in this case, the red player is in the city of Corinth. They would get to look at these cards here, look at the various symbols and look at the color of the card and everything, and choose whether to keep one. If they want to keep 2 of them, they can make it a strong action at this point. And then do something like that. When the player puts the cards back, one of them has to go face up, and the others can be face down. The next action is to do the interview action. Currently, the red player is in the city of Corinth with Philip, represented by the white disc. So they could interview Philip. What they'll do is they will determine at this point in the chronology in the history of the world, is Philip still alive or not? They'll pull a cube out of the bag here. There are 2 black cubes and 6 white cubes. Unfortunately, Philip, by drawing a black cube, is shown to be dead. You can still do the interview by speaking to those who knew Philip, but you'll be earning fewer points because your story will have less validity. If you drew a white cube, you'll be able to earn more points because you're able to speak to Philip directly. What you'll do is you'll multiply a certain number of points times the number of these white circles here on your leaflets representing your knowledge and your stories of Philip. Then you'll grab one of these cards so that if other players in the future interview Philip, you'll also get some points, some more validity in your story. The last thing that you can do is you can do the rearrange action, which allows you to either swap the cards that are on the same leaflet here, or to be able to swap entire leaflets so that you are trying to line certain things up. Now, when you follow with certain actions, you get to do a weaker version of it. So if somebody travels, then you can move one step with them. Or if they do the tradition action and they grab a card here, if you follow, you can choose to also grab one of these cards, 5 or 26, from this duplicate deck here. And so maybe the other player would have paid to take that follow action and grabbed that same card. These cards will have all of the same information on them, just different backs. When you interview, players can also follow, and they'll earn points if they have already interviewed the person that you are currently interviewing. And then if they follow rearranging, they also get to rearrange leaflets or rearrange pages. So after all of the actions are done, the next player becomes the lead player, and they get to take their actions, and players might pay each other to follow their actions, and so on and so forth. Now, going back to these literary devices, this is the main way to score points at the end of the game. You are trying to accomplish these 4 different objectives. The most straightforward one here is chronology. These numbers, 1 through 36, are all written in chronological order of the life of Jesus. And so if you are able to have more things in chronology, 1, then 5, then 6, then 26, even if there's holes in between, then you are moving up this chronology track. And currently I'm at 4 cards in chronological order. There is another track over here for chiasm. Chiasm is the idea of repetitive teaching, or teaching via pattern, which is kind of an A, B, B, A pattern. And so if you can make these symbols here on the gray part of these cards line up into a chiasm, then you can earn points. So for example, this here is a foot symbol, laying on of hand symbol, laying on of hand symbol, then a foot symbol. That is an A, B, B, A pattern, and so then you would move up here on the chiasm track. Emphasis is having 4 of the same of these symbols, so if I was able to get 4 of these laying on of hand symbols, then I can move up here. And inclusio is having 3 of the same color in a row, so if I get a 3 color of witness. So if I could get a 3rd Peter card over here, then that would be 1 inclusio. You can get multiples of these and try to move up these tracks, and then this is kind of a majority scoring at the end of the game. So let's say this was the end game scoring situation here. The player who is furthest ahead is going to get 15 points, and for every step behind them that any number of players are, they're going to earn a diminishing number of points. So for example, 15, then 11, 8, and then all these players would earn 6. Or in this case, this is 15, this player would earn 11, 8, and then these ones here will earn 6. So you're trying to get majorities in these different tracks. You're trying to have majorities of your own player color. You're trying to get points from interviewing people that you have lots of the colors of the symbols of, following suit, and so on and so forth. Over the course of the game, as you hit these spots, you're going to add more leaflets so that you can increase the size of your chronology. And then lastly, at the end of the game, you'll score up everything and see who has the most points. They are the winner. I'd like to talk first about this theme. I really, really appreciate this theme, not just as a religious person. I am, Christian, and I think that this theme is very cool to see represented in a game and gamified in a way that you can play it and you are in the pursuit of points and whatnot, and you want to move up these tracks and all that stuff. Now, that part is the gamification of it, but I appreciate the historicity of what you're doing here. You are a gospel writer. The first 4 books of the New Testament are the Gospels written by people. Many of those people were not actually eyewitnesses of any of the events that they wrote about. They would go around and they would interview people, talk with people, gather and collect historical records. And this game reflects that in a really, really interesting and respectful way. Nothing about the gamification process of this story seemed disrespectful to the history of what was happening here. And I really appreciate that. There was a review I did a few weeks ago called 6 Awful Didactic Bible Games or something to that effect, in which I basically just kind of trashed all these games. I said that they were really bad, they were simplistic, they were trying to teach some sort of morality via mechanisms that were like take that and mean or silly or very lucky. This game is not that. This game is the antithesis of that. It is respectful, it's historical, it is it by its mechanisms helps you appreciate history and it helps you appreciate that. Now, is there a religious aspect to this? Of course there is, because of the subject matter. And I feel like that's also treated respectfully. And I like that as you're playing, you get to see these different stories. the way that they categorize them into things like red cards are teaching moments, so the things like the parables and the Sermon on the Mount. The gray cards are triumph over death and whatnot. White cards represent the perfect human. That was Jesus. Things like that, these categorical breakdowns are really interesting because they tie into different Bible verses and Bible chapters and stuff. So I think if you're looking for a game that has that religious aspect, you'll appreciate this. If you're looking for a game that has a historical approach to the writings of the New Testament, I think you'll also really appreciate that. Either way, there's an audience there. However, the audience either way has to be looking for a historical game. This game has its flaws. I look at it as Eurogamer Chris, people who enjoy games like Carcassonne and Settlers of Catan and Dominion and that type of stuff. You look at this and you think, there's a lot of missing graphic design that would be so blatantly helpful. Where's the shorthand for what is a chiasmus versus an inclusio versus emphasis? Those things could be printed on there. The victory point track, the majorities on the tracks is such an interesting mechanism. I love the way that this game does it. Whoever is furthest ahead, that point is 15 victory points with reducing points behind it. That gets rid of the issue where, in many games, first place is 7 steps up on the track, second place is 1 step on the track and gets second place points. This makes you interested and invested in all of the different tracks, and you have to sacrifice something in order to be able to move up on other ones. You might tank your chronology. You might start with card number 26 at the front of your, in front of your leaflets, your gospel leaflets, and then move to 14, then 1, then 5, 7, 8. So all of these cards, only 4 of them have a chronology to them. You're going to really suffer on that chronology track on the bottom, but you might be doing it because you want to implement these literary devices, the chiasm, the having a lot of those same circle symbols together, and especially cards that have many of them. You can really line up things to give you, within 3 cards, 2 steps of the inclusio. I find that the interviewing mechanism is very... it's very representative. As the time track goes by, you are removing white cubes from the bag, and so it's more and more likely that as you go to interview someone with the interview action, that you're going to draw a black cube out of that bag. The longer you take to get to certain people, the more likely that they have died, the more likely they've passed on. There are these rules in here that are fantastic in that historical sense, but aren't always smooth or always easy to understand. Chiasm is something fairly difficult to explain because you're looking for different kinds of symbols. There's the gray symbols, not the colored circles in the top left corner. You're looking at the bottom right. There's shortcuts, there's things that could have made this a little bit smoother that are missing. The components, this is a small publication. I look at this almost more as a passion project. The bag that you draw the cubes out of is kind of see-through. The map, you could see, is kind of a cut linen thing that's a little bit fraying at the ends. That stuff is going to bother a lot of people. It bothers me a little bit. It does. I'm not a huge aesthetics person, but the fact that the map is fraying does bother me. I don't think it's going to unravel sitting in the box and laying it out and playing the game. That's not what's going to happen, but I look at it and I get that feeling of this feels in one way incomplete, but in another way, I can look past that because this game is doing something incredibly unique and incredibly interesting. I kind of waffle on the score that I'm going to be giving this game because I think that the lead and the follow mechanism is cool, but I'm not always in an interesting position to follow, and so that there's like I said, there's mechanisms in here that work. Some of them not as swimmingly and smoothly as I would love, but I like this complete package. At the end of the day, the score I'm giving this game is a 7. It is a bit of a qualified 7, though, as a seal of approval, because I think this game is trying to do something incredibly unique, and therefore its target audience is very narrow. If you are in that target audience, I definitely recommend this game for you. But that doesn't include just every, I'm a Christian, I'm looking for a Bible-themed game. You also have to be looking for something that has its complexities and its intricacies in what is still kind of a straightforward game. Move, interview people, collect cards. You're going to be spending a lot of time sitting there trying to arrange your cards in a perfect way that really makes things work. This is not a children's game by any means, right? If you've watched the overview, you understand that I had to explain a lot of concepts to explain to you how those 4 basic actions worked. So I'm giving this a qualified, 7 out of 10. I do really like it. This is a game that's incredibly memorable. When I think back to games that I've played as a board game reviewer, there are many that I say, oh yeah, I played that one. That's true. Oh, I forgot about this game. But this game sticks out. And because of that, I'm able to look past a little bit of some of the production shortcomings, some of the symbolic the symbolism and the graphic design shortcomings. I really like this game, but I can't recommend it blanket across to everybody. So that's why I say you really ought to watch the rules overview for this game. If you're excited and say, hey, look, this is not just a simple cash grab. This is not a simplistic game that has, churchy stuff, crosses stickered all over it just to try to sell to a Christian market. This is an incredibly respectful game. I have a lot of respect for it because it has respect for what it is trying to set out to do. If you don't like the look of it, if you hate that map, if you hate kind of what you saw, then you know it's not for you. But I think that this game will have an audience who will really dive into it and appreciate it because it's not simple to do great at it. And so it's pretty rewarding in that sense. So that is my thoughts on the Acts of the Evangelist by Bell Tower Games. Like I said, seal of approval from me. I really enjoyed it. And I hope that if this is something you're looking for, that you'll enjoy it too. Till next time, thanks for coming by the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yee. Have yourselves a fantastic day.